Hello, comrades. Today I'm going to be doing a reading of Beyond Amit Shah's Verdict, Setbacks, Survival, and the Long Arc of People's War in India. This is an article by a Delhi-based student activist and Bhagat Singh uh, Chhatra Ekta Manch, which is an MLM student organization. And this is talking about the current state of the Maoist People's War in India. Um, and this can be found on banthought.net. Beyond Amit Shah's Verdict, Setbacks, Survival, and the Long Arc of People's War in India. What People's War in India looks like after a few months after the Indian state declared an end to Maoism in the country on the 31st of March 2026. On May Day 2026, revolutionary graffiti was documented at different locations in Delhi, the capital city of India. This happened 1 month after the Indian state had declared 31st of March as Naxal Mukt Bharat, the end of Maoism in India. In his address to the Lok Sabha, lower house of India's bicameral parliament, on the 30th of March, Union Home Minister Amit Shah hailed Operation Kagar as an intensification of Indian state's long-standing genocidal war against its own people to crush their struggles and clear the resource-rich forests for loot by their imperialist masters. This operation, known as, quote, the final solution to the Maoist problem, unquote, started on the 1st of January 2024 with the killing of Magli, a 6-month-old baby in Bastar. Chhattisgarh. Since then, over 100,000 paramilitary personnel with even more police officers, border security force, and district reserve guards, Cobra, and other special counter-insurgency units have been deployed to the region. Over the past 16 months of this operation, illegal detention of Adivasis, mortar and aerial bombardment, sexual violence, and cold-blooded encounters claimed nearly 1,000 lives. Blood contracts in the form of memorandums of understanding were signed with companies such as Metals, Jindals, Tata, Esser, POSCO, Vedanta, and more to build mines and roads upon the corpses of Adivasis. This open loot of resources and witch hunt of not just the Maoist revolutionaries but all form of dissent that comes in the way of mining corporations and their parasitic ambitions is what the Indian state and Amit Shah boasted in the name of economic growth and development. Claiming to have ended Naxalism of pen and gun on the 31st of March, according to government data, around 3,000 Maoists, including some big leaders, have surrendered over the past year. Well, a lot of these who refuse to give up arms have been killed in cold blood. Some intellectuals also say that Maoism has not ended but changed forms, from an underground party waging protracted war, people's war, to the legal one. But how much of it is true? Is it even possible for Maoism to change forms and become open? What does class war in India look like after a few months after the Indian state has declared the country free of the quote-unquote the Maoist threat? These are some of the questions that we shall try to answer through this article. Marxism and versus revisionism. A brief overview. Marxism is the science of laws governing the development of nature and society. It is a science for the liberation of the proletariat, which will pave the way for the complete liberation of humankind. And, as stated by Marx in the Communist Manifesto, it is not only possible without forceful overthrow of all existing conditions. Only an organized armed struggle of the people can overthrow the highly organized state working for the bourgeoisie. Lenin reinforced this in the State and Revolution, emphasizing that the suppression of the bourgeoisie by the proletariat is impossible without a violent revolution. Mao extended this, saying that, quote unquote, political power grows from the barrel of a gun, end quote, insisting that revolution is inseparable from armed struggle. Revolution is an act of violence, and therefore there is no Marxism, let alone Maoism, without an armed struggle. Then why do some Maoists talk of the change in their form of struggle from primarily illegal to a completely legal one, while still claiming to adhere to the revolutionary line of Marxism, Leninism, Maoism. For as long as Marxism has existed, it has been in struggle against first utopian socialism and then revisionism. Revisionists are petty bourgeois fellow travelers in the revolution who have moved into the camp of the ruling class. They recognize the exploitation inherent in the class society but refuse to align with the proletarian revolution, which would demand sacrifice and require them to abandon their class interests. Hence, while claiming to be Marxists, because Marxism has proven itself to be the only true science for the liberation of mankind, they turn a blind eye to the fact that antagonistic contradictions can only be resolved through war, and turn to reformism and class collaboration. A lot of petty bourgeoisie turn to this camp, especially in times of setback, to the revolutionary movement due to the vacillating nature of this class. As the fighting people grow ideologically, politically, and organizationally under the red banner of Marxism, the ruling classes shake with fear as they see close their historic defeat. In such times, revisionists distort Marxism and derail it from its essence. This is how revisionists help, and ultimately fall into the camp of the ruling class. The struggle against revisionism is thus the struggle of the exploited and oppressed masses against the ruling classes. This is why Marx waged a sharp struggle against Lassalle, Bakunin, and the Blanquists, and Lenin refuted Bernstein and identified the Mensheviks who advocated for an open party as the greatest internal threat to the movement. Lenin brought forward in this struggle that insistence of transition to socialism by peaceful parliamentary means is nothing but betrayal to the proletariat. Mao took this further in struggle against the revisionism of Khrushchev. The Naxalbari uprising in India, led by Comrade Charu Majumdar, was a struggle against not just the landlords in the Indian state, but also against the opportunism of CPI and CPIM. He said, quote, members will have to think anew about every mass movement, in the style of our movement, in our organizational thinking. In other words, in almost every sphere of our lives, revisionism has built its nest. As long as we cannot uproot it, the new revolutionary party cannot be built. India's revolutionary possibilities will be hindered. History will not forgive us. End quote. Thus, the history of Marxism has always been the history of struggle against revisionism. Crisis in Indian Revolutionary Movement and CPI Maoist struggle against the revisionist surrender line. Even today, opportunism, liquidationism, revisionism continues to plague the Indian Communist movement, and this precisely is the internal threat it faces, bigger than the enemy's military attack under Operation Kagar or any such operation. History teaches us that there are two parallel political lines that contrast with each other for political power. One line has been laid down by the communist revolutionaries like Marx, Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Charu Majumdar, Kanhai, Chatterjee, Basavaraju, Raju Da, Kosada, Ranuka, Kishan Da, Hidma, etc., while the other line is being laid down by the traitors like Bernstein, Kautsky, Lin Biao, Prachanda, Sanu, Satish, Devji, Venugopal, Kobad Gandhi, Balraj, Prashant, Rahi, etc. The holders of the second line are opportunist enemy agents who are attacking the proletarian political line in order to weaken and thereafter obliterate the proletarian line. The correct political line emerges only through struggle against opportunist revisionist elements. CPI Maoists understood that Sanu Satish, Devji clique, responsible for instigating the line of surrender, laying down of weapons, and the disintegration of revolutionary ranks amidst the encirclement and annihilation campaign against the party and the army, are not friends of the people. They are traitors and enemy agents disguised as revolutionaries. After Sanu failed to make the party open and legal with his press statement and the statements, he surrendered his AK-47 to the fascist BJP RSS representative, the Maharashtra chief minister. In an interview with the leading English newspaper, Devji said that he still upheld Marxism-Leninism, Maoism, and would work through legal means to accomplish the party's political goals. Ironically, he also called Sanu a traitor while promising to work to make the Revolutionary Party open and legal, and request the government to lift the ban on it. Anyone acquainted with the party with basic Marxism-Leninism, Maoism will appreciate the fact that the Communist Party cannot be legal and open. Comrade Lenin's reply to the politics of surrender, conveniently held by Devji, is to come out in the legal press against the endeavor or in favor of an open party is simply to disrupt our party, and we must regard the people who do this as the bitter enemies of the party. Lenin in the report to the Brussels conference. Fear, said Comrade Marx, is the distinguishing characteristic of opportunism. Comrades Basarvaraju, Raju Kosada, and Hidma all had this situation before them. But they chose to be martyrs for the revolution. It was their politics that was dearer to them than their skin. But for people like Sanu and Devji, this was not the option they chose, liquidationism. While speaking about liquidationists, Comrade Lenin said, quote, "Liquidationism is opportunism that goes to the length of renouncing the party. It is self-evident that the party cannot exist if it includes those who do not recognize its existence. It is equally understandable that the renunciation of the quote-unquote underground under the existing conditions is a renunciation of the old party." End quote. People of the world has exposed Sanu, and therefore, in order to confuse the rank of revolutionaries, the ruling class had to prop up the face of Devji. Like Sanu, the Maoist party exposed Devji too as a bitter enemy of the proletariat and a traitor of higher order. They made it clear that Devji is another Sanu, but with a revolutionary cladding, and waged a sharp ideological struggle against the line of surrender, against those who wanted to break the working class party. Indian revolutionaries once again reiterated that throughout the period of the new democratic revolution, armed struggle will be the primary form of struggle and army the primary form of organization. All efforts at mass movements stand useless if they don't ultimately serve the people's war to tear apart the very structures of exploitation of man by man. While having declared India Maoist free, the crisis-ridden imperialism is getting more restless and trying to use psychological warfare against the revolutionary warfare, where it is still trying to make the revolutionary surrender. Amidst all the obstacles created by the ruling class, their agents, and opportunist liquidationist revisionist elements, revolutionaries are marching forward on the path of new democratic revolution, socialism, and communism. Communist Party of India Maoist has expelled the traitors and betrayers and continues on the path of protracted people's war, the path laid down by the brave martyrs. Hence, although the Maoist movement in India has faced huge losses, the three magic weapons, party, army, and united front still exist by waging a sharp struggle against opportunism, liquidationism, revisionism, and holding high the glorious banner of Marxism, Leninism, Maoism. People's war in India continues. If you fall one evening twilight, you should fall like a sun, and behind you, thousands of shooting stars. On the 13th of April, Rangabonya Bhagya, known as Comrade Rupi, refused to surrender before the Brahminical Hindutva fascist India state and laid down her life in an encounter in Kanker, Chhattisgarh, upholding the revolutionary line of armed struggle. She was a commander of the People's Liberation Guerrilla Army, PLGA. Rupi was a 46-year-old area committee member of the CPI Maoist who had left behind her village in Siddipet district of Telangana to serve as a full-time professional revolutionary at the age of 24. Upon her martyrdom, the Indian state withheld her body for 48 hours before releasing it. Thousands of people participated in her funeral in her hometown of Telangana, marching and chanting slogans of glory to the People's War and their fallen hero Rupi. the peasants chanted, Bhagya, Rupi is immortal, and the banners were hung throughout the village, paying homage to Rupi. She refused to betray the revolution and laid down her life, remaining forever immortal in the hearts of the people. Her life and ending serves as a testament or metaphor that the spirit of the revolution or Maoism can never be undone. 2 days later, on the 15th of April, the state's security forces had encircled Maoist Politburo member Monsieur Besra and his squad in Saranda Forest, West Singhbom district. Jharkhand, upon the inputs given by Tritiya Prastuti Committee (TPC) goons. TPC is a reactionary police-backed splinter criminal organization operating in Jharkhand that serves the interests of the Indian state, contractors, mining capital, and local elites by dividing the oppressed people along caste lines, engaging in extortion, informer work, and counterinsurgency against the revolutionary forces in the crossfire between the Maoists and the state armed forces in Saranda. At least 6 of Cobra personnel were injured during the government's data, which means the actual number could be higher, and Monsieur Besra's squad moves from the location. This incident was an echo of the slogan of the protracted People's War through the thick forests of Jharkhand and across the world, governing that Maoism is alive and refuses to surrender in front of the enemy, as they gained nothing from the operation. The desperate, panic-ridden Indian state reacted to its defeat by dressing up the 4 TPC goons who had given them the information as Maoists and killing them in a fake encounter in Chhatra, Jharkhand. Recently, on the 2nd of May, during the state's area domination operation, 4 personnel of District Reserve Guard, the anti-revolutionary army of surrendered Maoists, were killed in an improvised explosive device, IED, blast from Kanker Narayanpur border in Chhattisgarh's Bastar region. As the crisis of imperialism sharpens, people all over the country are coming to the streets and fighting militantly. In Sijimali, Odisha, the Adivasis have been organizing continuous round-the-clock hill vigils, protests, road blockades, and resistance camps in their forest to prevent the illegal takeover of their land by Vedanta for bauxite mining. In April this year, women stood in the front lines with axes in their hands to stop the road's construction connected to the mining project. In Pana and Chhatarpur districts in Madhya Pradesh, Adivasi and peasant communities are resisting the Ken Betwa river linking project, which would submerge villages, displace thousands of families, and destroy the forest. The villagers here occupied roads and forest checkpoints, halted construction, organized mass gatherings, held all-night protest camps, and refused evacuation. Hundreds of women staged the Chita Andolan funeral pyre protest, laying on symbolic pyres to show that the displacement is equivalent to a death sentence for them. The women in this protest declared that they will take up arms and join the Naxalites if Vedanta does not step back. In Noida, thousands of industrial workers protested for higher wages and better working conditions. These workers blockaded the highways and industrial roads, shut down factory zones, occupied intersections, confronted police barricades, threw stones, torched vehicles, and damaged the company of police property. So terrified was the Indian state by the workers stepping beyond the narrow confines of legal unionism and taking up the militant struggle that only weeks after declaring the country Naxal-free, it began to see the specter of Naxalbari in the Noida workers' protest. True to its comprador fascist nature, the state has been responding to all these protests with brutal repression. On the 1st of May, International Workers' Day, revolutionary graffiti upholding Marxism, Leninism, Maoism was documented at different locations in the capital city of Delhi. This graffiti also included the slogan Gar Gar Se Hidma Naklega, reiterating the revolutionaries don't die, they multiply. All this proves that not only that the CPI Maoist refuses to bow down in front of the enemy and continues to wage an armed struggle, but also that people's faith in it remains alive. Flames of Naxalbari still burn across India, and the Indian state has failed miserably in its final war against the revolutionary movement. Claims of triumph against CPI Maoist that Union Home Minister Amit Shah has made on the 30th and 31st of March hence remained debunked. Defeated armies learn well. Quote, let the liberals and terrified intellectuals lose heart after the first generally mass battle for freedom. Let them repeat like cowards, don't go where you have been beaten before, don't tread that fatal path again. The class-conscious proletariat will answer them, the great wars in history, the great revolutionary problems were solved only by the advanced classes returning to the attack again and again. They achieved victory after having learned the lessons of defeat. Defeated armies learn well. The revolutionary classes of Russia have been defeated in their first campaign, but the revolutionary situation remains in new forms and by other ways, sometimes much more slowly than we would wish. The revolutionary crisis is approaching once more. It's maturing again. We must carry out the prolonged task of preparing larger masses for the revolutionary crisis. This preparation must be more serious, taking into consideration the higher, more concrete tasks, and the more successfully we fulfill this task, the more certain we will be our victory in the new struggle. Comrade Lenin, unquote, Comrade Lenin, the year of reaction. The crisis that the Indian revolutionary movement faces today is not new to communism. The Russian revolutionary movement faced similar crisis after 1905. The Tsarist state had intensified repression, the counter-revolutionary terror went inside the party's movement, and there emerged opportunism, liquidationism, revisionism, with some elements seeking to abandon underground revolutionary work in favor of legalism and adaptation to bourgeois parliamentary structures. There was a lack of centralized coordination between the committees. The Bolsheviks overcame this by struggling against a line of opportunism, liquidationism, revisionism, rebuilding a disciplined, underground, ideologically united party based on close coordination, democratic centralism, and rooted in class struggle. Thus, within little more than a decade, the very forces that had been declared crushed, defeated, returned with greater strength, swept aside Tsarism and bourgeois rule throughout the February and October revolutions of 1917 and shook the foundations of the world. Setbacks in a revolutionary movement are not accidental interruptions, but a normal part of historical development driven by contradictions. Social change does not advance in a straight, smooth line. Instead, development proceeds through conflict, reversals, ruptures, and leaps. Every revolutionary movement contains internal contradictions between advanced and backwards forces, correct and incorrect political lines, organization and spontaneity, as well as external contradictions with the ruling class and the state. Setback may temporarily weaken the movement, but it also exposes the weaknesses, tests political lines, eliminates unstable elements, and further develops the revolutionary movement ideologically, politically, and organizationally. Temporary defeats and setbacks become moments through which the revolutionary movement transforms itself and prepares the condition for future advances. Indian communist movement today faces a situation similar to what the Bolsheviks had faced after 1905. Indian revolutionaries may be weak today, but this weakness is not strategic one. Strategically, they are on the correct political line, and therefore the laws of science explain that they will rise up to destroy the three big mountains: imperialism, comprador bureaucratic capitalism, and feudalism, which are crushing people in this country and the world. The reason for this temporary setback is not the state repression, but the opportunist, liquidationist, revisionist elements within the revolutionary movement, and the continuous struggle is being waged against that. The party of the proletariat is like a living organism which preserves and strengthens its revolutionary vitality through constant regeneration of cells. For the Indian revolutionary movement, the wrong ideas are defeated in a two-line struggle, and the opportunists, liquidationists, revisionists who try to make the party open are like the dead blood cells that have been shed off the body. The party lives lives to develop and advance the struggle for liberation. People's war in the country continues, and it shall continue on the path laid down by Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, and Mao. The numerous martyrs of the Indian revolutionary movement until the exploited and oppressed masses drown the fascist state in the blood it has shed and rise to victory. But of the fallen peoples of warriors will nurture the people's war. And that's the end of the reading. Now, a little bit of commentary, I don't have very much, but a little bit. As we can see, the People's war in India, despite the claims of the Indian government, continues to live on. Um, the conditions in India are not conducive to the people. They're not helpful to the people, and so as such, the terrain is still ripe for the Naxalites, for the Maoists. Um, Also, we can see that they still have a lot of support through things like we saw there's graffiti in the Capitol. There were militant protests, and there were people saying we're going to potentially join the Naxalites. Um, and we can see that while they have faced great setbacks, it's also been setbacks that weaken the revisionist elements within the party. So while there may have been mass surrenders, these surrenders are of people who were revisionists and were upholding an incorrect line within the party, further strengthening the party. It's like you're burning off all of the weak elements. It's like you're I don't know, refining a metal. You're melting it down and purifying it. All the unwanted aspects are gone, and now you have something more pure. It may not be as large as it once was, but it's more pure, prepared to wage struggle. Now, I don't fully agree with everything this article says. It seems to place a too little emphasis on legal struggle, which I think legal struggle is still very important. And I mean, I think it did acknowledge it slightly, but still, there is a lot of room for legal struggle. At least, I don't know the conditions in India that well, but around the world, there is still plenty of room for legal struggle in certain countries. But that does not mean that the above ground struggle is the only way um, that movements work. And so, yeah, that's pretty much all I have. Thank you.